Thank you, David. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first of 2 workshops in a new faculty institute that focuses on student success. Today's panel and panelists show the importance and the value of close collaboration between student affairs and academic affairs. Before we start, I want to thank the panelists for their participation and support of TU students and faculty. I also would like to thank Dr. Westerman and David from Facet for their evolution of the new Faculty Institute. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Vernon Hurt, Vice President of Student Affairs. Dr. Hurt joined the TU community on February 17th, 2020, just about a month before we rapidly moved into a virtual format. His extensive higher education experience more than prepared him for this challenge. He most recently served as Associate Vice President of Student Affairs and Dean of Students at Iowa State University. Prior to that, Dr. Hurt served in leadership roles in student affairs at the College of William and Mary. You can learn more about Dr. Hurt at the provided link. Dr. Hurt, thank you for choosing Towson University and for your leadership in these dynamic times. I will now pass you the virtual microphone to introduce our first panel.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this session today. I want to say welcome to our new faculty colleagues to here at Towson. We are very much committed to the concept of holistic student success. And that really means that each and every one of us across campus has some critical role in supporting the success of our students. And so we really do value the collaboration between the Division of Student Affairs, with academic affairs, our colleagues in OIE, and really all the divisions across campus. So it's a great opportunity to be able to welcome you and share in today's session. I'm really excited to be able to welcome and introduce some of our colleagues, dynamic leaders that are continuing to invest much of their time, energy, and expertise in student success here at Towson University. So first, I want to introduce Dr. Anthony Skevakis, who is our Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students here. Our second panelist is Amy Morales, who is the Manager of Student Case Management in the Office of the Vice President for Student Affairs and represents TU's care team, which you'll learn more about. Alison is the Director of the Office of Student Conduct and Civility Education. Dr. Mollie Herman is the Interim Director of our Counseling Center. And our last panelist for this discussion is Susan Willemin, who is the Director of Accessibility and Disability Services. All of these leaders are just really important partners. They're great leaders with great expertise and insight, and we look forward to the insight, the wisdom, and the resources that they'll share during this discussion. So thank you again, Dr. Wright. Thank you, Dr. Westerman, for the invitation, and looking forward to a great discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Skevakis. I'm the Dean of Students and Associate VP here at Towson. I have a great job on campus. I get to emanate empathy, understanding, and empowerment with our staff, our students, our faculty on a daily basis. No 2 days are the same. I came to the university about 1.5 years ago, and I've worked in the states of Florida, Arizona, New Jersey, and Georgia, so I've bounced around a little bit. One of the key things that I get to do on campus is coordinate a lot of the care when we talk about things like holistic student success. So there's a number of areas that I work with directly. One of those areas that you hear a lot about today is case management and our care team. I want you to think about student support services. Like if you needed help, if you needed someone whose primary role it is to help a student or help you to help a student, that's the group to go to. I work with our student success program, our military and veterans center. I work with civic engagement. This is one of those areas that you see a lot of activity this year, especially with community service, political engagement, voting, the census, things like environmental initiatives. We also work closely with student conduct. And there are two primary areas in there: alternative dispute resolution and student behavior. And so we'll have Alison talk a lot about that today. I also work directly with the Counseling Center and Health Center. So they are your kind of rudimentary things for counseling one-on-one, in group support services, and then a lot of the health services that you would expect to see on a university campus: health education, testing, those types of things. I'm also connected with our Tune campus. That's Towson University Northeast up here in Harford County. So I work with them regularly. And then my day job also includes working with assessment across the division. So when you think about the Dean of Students role, I want you to kind of think of chameleon, someone who's here to help, someone who's here to empathize, listen, and understanding, someone who's available. You can email us directly through our student affairs at towson.edu or dean of students at towson.edu to directly contact us. I'm available for consults. I'm available for, hey, what ifs? I'm even available for, hey, this is what took place in my class. I'm thinking about it afterwards, and I kind of need some indirect or some direct outreach. So feel free to reach out. I know there's a lot more panelists out here, and I think, Amy, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Morales. I am the manager of student case management. And as Anthony explained, I work closely with the Dean of Students office. So you think of my role primarily in two ways. The first way is day in and day out case management. So that is student outreach, support, and assistance in all manner of ways with regard to their needs and their struggles. We reach out to them directly every day and refer them to resources on campus. And if we don't have a resource, we find ways to help them and guide them through, whether that be navigating the complexity of university systems, or whether that be helping them manage their class with their faculty members. The other half is care team. That is a team in which I co-chair. Anthony is the chair of. And those are for, it's a team of interdisciplinary members within the university. And we look at students' needs at a higher level. So students who may be a threat to themselves, maybe experiencing some suicidal ideation, and other types of high-level needs. And that's called the care team. The way that you can directly find us is by reaching out in student affairs, of course. But if you have a concern for a student, whether that be academic, social, emotional, or you're just not sure how to help them, you can submit a care report, and we can definitely provide you with that link. And we look at every care report that comes in the same day that it comes in, and we reach out the same business day that it comes in. So you can rest assured, if you have an issue, you can reach out directly, or you can submit a care report.
Hi, everyone. I think I'm next on the panel. My name is Alison, and I'm the Director of Student Conduct and Civility Education. Our role in our office is to uphold the set of community standards that we have for all students who come to Towson. So we interface with students who might have violated policies, and we walk them through the process of determining did they or didn't they, and then what do we do about that. Our primary charge is to educate our students. We're all here as educators, and we serve to support that mission of the university. The students who come to Towson are most often not fully formed individuals, right? We're all evolving and changing. And so we get the opportunity to interface with them when they might have an opportunity to learn and grow. So that's what we do through our process. And it's a challenging part to contribute to the university, but it's a really fulfilling part, that role that we play on the campus. In terms of how we engage with faculty and how we can support you, we often are called to consult with faculty who are challenged by behavior in the classroom and the way in which you might best manage that. So we're happy to serve in that capacity for you, to help you strategize what works for you in your classroom, and what boundaries you might be able to set up, and how do you respond to those, and when is it appropriate for us to maybe help intervene if something has crossed that boundary. So please feel free to call our office. We are all working remotely, but we are here to still serve you all and the students. The other thing that we have just initiated, which Anthony mentioned when he introduced the things that he does, but our office just introduced an alternative resolution process. And that is a new way, another tool to be using to address issues that might arise, conflicts that might arise, and harm that might be done to members of the community. So I'm happy to talk more about that if you're interested, but it is a really exciting initiative that we implemented this year as we revised the Code of Student Conduct. So that's all I'll say for now. I'll leave any other questions you might have for later.
Hi, everybody. This is Mollie Herman. I think I was next in the lineup. As Dr. Hurt shared with you, I'm the interim director of the Counseling Center. I'm also the training director of the Counseling Center, which means I get to coordinate our wonderful doctoral internship program. I've worked at Towson for almost 27 years, so I obviously like it here a lot. It's a wonderful team, and even during this pandemic, I think we've all missed being able to be together physically, but I've been so thrilled to be part of a team that still comes together so effectively and with so much support during this difficult time. So I'm really happy to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Counseling Center. We are the only mental health service on campus. So when we serve students. That's our primary mission, is to support the academic mission of the university by making sure that students are in good mental health and able to manage their overall health and wellness. We are staffed with licensed psychologists, with psychologists in training at the very advanced levels of their training. As I said, we have a doctoral internship program. Our interns are with us full-time for an entire year and are highly, highly skilled. It's a very competitive program to get into. We also have some advanced doctoral level trainees who are not yet on their internships. We have a few psychiatrists who actually provide adjunct services only for students who are already being seen by one of our clinicians. And we also have some substance abuse specialists who will provide, oh, I'm sorry, I'm being attacked by my cat. She had very bad timing. So we have 2 substance abuse specialists who provide therapy for students who are struggling with alcohol, tobacco, or other drug, and a wonderful health educator who actually was just featured on WMAR with for one of her incredibly creative initiatives called Yappy Hour, where everybody on campus was invited to join. We show their pets on campus. I could have shared my mean cat yes, for that Yappy Hour. So some of the different things that we do, we do provide ongoing counseling, but this year, in response to just growing demand and resources unable to keep up with demand, we revised our entire clinical services system. What we offer now, which is really exciting, is same-day service. So if you talk to any students who are struggling in any way with anything that might even remotely sound like they could use some emotional support, tell them to check out our website, which I had posted in the chat a few minutes ago, and to give us a call. When they give us a call, they will be seen the very same day that they call. It's a half-hour appointment. We have everything. We've been working remotely very effectively since March, since we were all sent home in the middle of March. We're continuing to work remotely, and it's working out really well. Students like it. We surveyed them, and they said that they really feel like we're meeting their needs remotely. So when a student comes in for that initial appointment, they will meet with a counselor who will figure out what is the stress that they're dealing with right now. We're looking at the overall context of what they're dealing with and plug them in to a wide range of different resources that we've collected. And if you go to our website, you can see a lot of them. A lot of them are actually even available to faculty and staff. Some of the online resources, you can certainly feel free to check those out yourself. Everything on our website is vetted, carefully vetted, to make sure that any of those links are responsible, providing responsible information. So we have drop-in outreach programs that students can attend. We have outreach by request. If you have a specific program that you would like to have us offer for your class, please feel free to fill out an outreach request form. We have daily drop-in groups called CDC. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting what it stands for. It does not stand for what you think CDC is, but it's our daily support group. Connections during COVID. So it's for students to feel they can come every day if they like, so that they don't ever have to feel alone. We have special resources that we developed for students who are in quarantine. We also offer consultation. So if you aren't sure what to do, a student is concerning to you, but you're not sure how to talk to them, or whether it rises to the level of filing a care report, as Amy described, give us a call. We'll advise you on what you can do. And typically when you call, you'll be able to speak with a counselor immediately. And the last thing I want to share with you is that we have 24-hour mental health coverage. Now, this is also new, and we are thrilled to be able to offer this. So the same phone number that's on our website, 24 hours a day, that will be when we are not open. We're open 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. When we're not open, that number is directly answered by a mental health professional who can provide crisis support to students and who can provide consultation and guidance to you as faculty. Thank you.
I think I'm last but not least. I'm Susan Willemin, the Director of the Office of Accessibility and Disability Services. And like Molly, I'm a long timer. I love Towson, and I've been here just about 22 years. So I think like her, it shows how much I've enjoyed working here. Our office supports student success by providing accommodations and services to students with disabilities who are registered with our office, and the purpose of which is to help them achieve their educational goals, and we collaborate very closely with faculty to do this. When we're physically available, we're located over in the administration building, and we include a testing center. And currently our office is open because we're providing services to students, but with very minimal staff and minimal hours, and we're only meeting with students remotely. When we're fully staffed, which we're not quite at the moment, we have 11 staff, 2 of whom are dedicated to the testing center. And we work with about 2,200 students at this point, and that represents approximately 10% of the TU student population. Most of our students who are registered have as their primary disability mental health. That's about 30% of the students that we serve. Followed by students with learning disabilities as their primary disability at about 22%, and followed closely by ADHD as a disability at 21%. But we also have students with medical disabilities, students on the autism spectrum, students who are deaf and hard of hearing, blind and have low vision, students with mobility and physical disabilities, with brain injuries and speech and language disabilities. So we work with a wide variety of students with various disabilities. And so to register, the process is fairly simple. We've tried to make it as straightforward as possible. The student can complete an ADS application on our website remotely. And then they provide us with some appropriate documentation of their disability. And as I think you can imagine, it's been challenging for us to be able to help students, working with them to provide that additional documentation. So we're being as flexible as possible and registering students provisionally for the time being until they can provide us with more complete documentation when things open up, and that's easier to get documentation from a provider. And then the student meets with a specialist. And in the spring, we were doing a lot of phone intakes, and that didn't nearly impress us as being as effective as face-to-face. So we really are providing remote meetings via Zoom or WebEx in virtually all cases. So we have eyes on the student as well as speaking to them about their disability and what their disability-related needs are. And then we develop an ADS memo for the student. We've been consulting extensively with faculty for a number of years regarding accommodations that really are more individualized, and especially in this remote environment, accommodations that really depend on the type of format of the class, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous, whether whether it's what the assignments are like, what the tests are like, and so forth. So we have been working more closely with faculty in developing those accommodations than ever before. Because the accommodations on a memo may not apply virtually, we really do ask faculty to communicate with students, even if they have, after giving you their memo, have not reached out to communicate with you. We'd ask that you communicate with them so that there's a better and clear understanding of what the expectations are surrounding accommodations as it relates to the requirements in your particular course. And then we require that students receive a new memo each semester so it's up to date. As I said, we've been working with students provisionally and some temporarily until we can get better documentation to help us better understand what their needs are. And so especially now, the memo and the accommodations that we've approved may change from semester to semester. So if a memo that you're receiving is not for the current semester, you should refer the student back to us. I would say one thing though, in thinking about what I'd like you to know, and the main point I'd like to faculty to realize is that, students with disabilities are experiencing all the same kinds of challenges that every student is experiencing. And in addition to that, have disability related challenges. And as I indicated, many of these are mental health challenges. And we know that students, all students, ourselves included, even as faculty and staff, are experiencing greater levels of stress and anxiety under the current, under the current environment. And so we're trying to be as flexible and as empathetic to students' needs as we can. And to the extent that faculty are able to do that as well, it's very helpful. Our students, in all the years I mentioned that I've worked here, I've never seen quite the level of struggles that students are having. And that's real. It was very evident in spring when we had to switch over so quickly, but it's really carried on to the fall. And in fact, we have more students registering with us now than we've ever had before. We thought our student population might go down a little bit, but that hasn't been the case. So I just wanted to make you aware of that and to remind you that we're here as a resource for faculty as well as for students. That all students who are registered with our department have an assigned specialist that's indicated on the memo. So if you have a question or concern or an issue with a student, would ask that you reach out to the specialist. And I'm always available to consult with faculty about anything related to disabilities in our office.
So we've come to the end of our introductions from our panelists, but we'd like to give you all a chance to ask questions of our panelists. If you're not sure who's who, you could just talk about your question and the appropriate person will step up and answer your questions. So please go ahead and unmute yourselves and speak whenever you're ready.
I'll begin with a quick question about disability services and accommodations. I've had a couple of conversations with students. They've reached out. We've talked about their memos. But then as the semester's gone on, as we've moved a little forward with the semester, we've kind of mutually decided that some more supports would be helpful for them. But there are sort of supports beyond what I sort of think I can do without having that memo. So is the best next step to have the student reach back out to their specialist, or for me to reach out and say that I'm okay with these accommodations? Or if you can just speak a little bit more to how we should do revisions throughout the semester.
I think in what you're describing, the most helpful thing would be for you to reach out to the specialist and have a conversation about what you're seeing on the part of the student and what you feel would be helpful. And if it would be helpful for you, we could add that accommodation to the memo as opposed to you providing it in isolation. And that's typically the best way that works. Related to that, in terms of flexibility, it's so helpful for faculty to be flexible, but it's good to include our office, because what happens if you don't is that you might provide an accommodation or a modification that goes far beyond what we would feel would be appropriate, and we might have an idea about what would be a better fit for the student and more in line with what we provide. But once you've acted outside of our office, then it becomes kind of an expectation on the part of the student that the next faculty member is going to provide that, and that makes it difficult for us then to rein things back in. So I appreciate your question, and that's my answer.
Thank you.
As we await more questions, I wonder if Anthony or Amy might want to talk about the care team process a little bit. I know that you've put some links in the chat, which are very helpful.
Sure, I can jump in and then Amy can supplement. So one of the key things that we try and always do and be somewhat accessible 24 hours a day. So if you were to click on the link that we sent on the care team page, you're able to enter in a report. And this is the primary tracking mechanism that we're using in order to best track students. So what'll happen is you go online, you click on the link, and it can be for a wide range of things. I'm concerned about a student not showing up to class. Maybe it's the second week of class and they've not shown up for a couple of days. Maybe it's a student that shared something private with you. Maybe it's a student who is, put something that could be concerning, maybe not concerning to be a level of an emergency, but something that concerned you that they shared in the class or wrote in an email. So you go into the message there, you put in the name of the student, you put in what took place, and that gets routed to our system and it develops an email. And then what typically happens is that email comes to our team. Amy will review that email, triage the case, and assign it to a case manager. So now what's happened is several people are alerted. Next, it goes to a person whose responsibility it is to follow up. That follow-up can result in a phone call usually to you or an email corresponding that we've received it and that we're going to have some follow-up and what that might look like. It might be, hey, thanks for reaching out. I've got some additional questions. What's the best phone number to reach you? And sometimes this will even happen after hours, right? And so then we usually have that kind of follow-up. Now, there are times where we'll reach out, we contact the student, and the student provides us with information and does not sign a release, meaning they say, we can't tell you what they just shared with us. So what we'll typically do is let you know what the resources were, what the follow-up would be for any student in that kind of situation. And then as time progresses, touch base with you as needed. Now, if it's a situation that's urgent or it's a potential threatening situation, that's not something we would do an automatic outreach and wait. We would call you right away for those types of things. And you also would call police, call campus safety versus sending an email at 8 o'clock at night for someone who might be a threat to themselves or someone else. Amy, is there other things you want to piggyback and bring into it?
Sure. Well, just a direct follow-up to what Anthony was explaining. Sometimes we're able to share information, and I just want to reassure you, one, if you don't hear from us, please assume that outreach has already been made. Sometimes we won't be able to share what the student shared with us, but I do want to reassure you that even if you don't hear a direct report about what the outreach entailed, that you should believe with no doubt that our team has responded to your report. I know some faculty members, they put in the report and they're like, well, did anybody really see this? And I appreciate that concern. And I'm here to reassure you, during the same business day, we reach out and we use multiple modalities. So we call, we email, we send an official letter because we have a capability to do that through this advocate system that we use. And we also now have some texting capabilities. So if we have a good cell phone number, we also use that modality. With regards to, just to echo what everyone has said here, if you're unsure, I would just err on submitting a report, because if you're unsure and you still have that feeling of there's something here, I would just go ahead and submit the report and let us figure that out for you. And sometimes we do reach out to students, they're like, I'm okay. But we just want to make sure that they know that they have the resources, even if they don't need them right now, that they have a point of contact. We always say, hey, if this might be resolved for you right now, but keep my contact information handy, because you may get into a situation where you have another question or you need assistance with something else, and we're here for you. So if there's one takeaway, if you do feel like you're not being responded to, it's either for those two reasons: we can't share, we don't have any information to share, or it just, the timing is not there as far as the contact with the student. But rest assured, we're on top of it. I know the question was specifically with regard to care. Anthony, do you want to explain that, the care team inner workings, or would you like me to?
Sure. So we have the care team is, and part of our holistic opportunity to bring folks together. We have folks from all over campus that attend these meetings. And so we have folks from the academic dean's office, most everyone that you've seen from student affairs on this call, All of us are involved there. We also have the health center involved. Campus safety is involved in that. Military and veterans. So all of us come into this room and we'll talk about referrals. And some of the referrals reach the level where we'll say, for example, I love the name Bob Shabubliak. That's our student Bob. And I'll read out a couple of the case histories. This is a student who had, let's say, 2 cases in a residence hall. Residence life housing is in the room. And it was for a roommate conflict. And housing is able to talk about their conflict. It also turns out that they had some kind of contact, let's say, with the police, and they're able to indicate this person has been on our radar for, let's say, a traffic violation. And then we also find out, let's say, from academic affairs, that the student has missed several classes. And so we're beginning to see a pattern of several touch points where we could potentially need to reach out. And then what we do is we make sure that whoever that case manager is, whether it's myself, whether it's Amy, whether it's Adam, it could also be someone like Alison who has a connection to that student. Sometimes the best path to someone is someone who already has that relationship. And so they'll reach out and then appropriately inform the group as needed. And so we try and always work on that holistic effort. What we find also sometimes is students get into a position where they assume things like, if I'm doing badly in one class and I miss one exam and one midterm, I'm going to fail everything for the semester. And what we try and coach them through is we might need to really look at the 5 classes you got, and one, yeah, there's no way for you to pass this. So is it best for you to withdraw from this class and really focus on your other 4? So an unintended positive consequence of our group is we do focus on retention of students. Might not be the exact picture that they had in mind, but we're doing our very best to make sure that their continuity stays here as a student. Other questions, anyone?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me? What kind of resources do you have for students who say are having language barriers? That it's I don't know, I don't consider it disability, but might just be having trouble expressing themselves because that's not their language. What kind of resources would you have for students in that?
I can take that. In fact, Gil Gibbs, who's the director of International Student and Scholar Office, is going to be talking after this panel. So she would be able to better address that question. But she and I were in contact this week regarding a student whose issue really was I needed extended time because of language limitations on a complicated exam. And so we talked about whether her office might be able to advocate for that student with a professor if they'd be willing to do that as opposed to leaving it up to the student themselves. So it's my understanding that they're willing to explore that. I think they had done it in the past and we're no longer doing it, but we're considering, kind of redoing, resurrecting that idea, based on trying to support students, especially in this environment.
I'm also thinking sort of in terms of teaching and disability sort of services here. I've noticed in many of my conversations with students just offhand that many of them have expressed that they've had concussions in the past and so haven't necessarily felt the need to go to seek accommodations. But I'm wondering if the university has resources or thoughts or opinions about just general strategies for universal inclusion in classrooms and teaching so that these students, might also, who maybe not as interested in seeking accommodations, will also sort of benefit from those sort of teaching techniques.
Tricia, do you want to take that regarding universal design, or do you want me to?
If you would start, Susan, thank you.
Yeah, so we've been working with faculty and with Facet and others in the university to try to encourage ways for faculty to design their courses more along the lines of universal design, to work with students in exactly the manner that you're referring to. I found that the faculty have been extremely receptive and are very creative and trying to be as inclusive as possible. And part of that inclusion is designing instruction so that that it benefits the most learners. And invariably, students with disabilities benefit, but so do all students. One good example of this is, I think with us going virtually, it's very helpful to, if we can find the funding to do so, to provide for captioning for lectures, or for maybe more simply and not as expensively, providing a recording afterwards so students can go back if they've missed something, things along those lines. Trish, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Susan. We also have a community, I'm sorry, I just blanked. A community of practice on student engagement that is rooted in UDL. It actually grew from a UDL, Universal Design for Learning group that existed at Towson for many years. I just arrived at Towson about 16 months ago and found that existing group, and we just decided to revamp it and broaden it a little bit and make it a community of practice for student engagement. So if any faculty are interested, Erin especially, in joining us, since you do have an interest in this area, we meet once every month or so and just discuss, how best to bring this information out to faculty so that they can engage all students, the diverse learners that they may have in their classrooms. Also, you could always email facet@towson.edu, and ask us for support in this area at any time, and we're happy to talk about pedagogy with you. And of course, Susan's office would be the one that could talk more about other types of support services like captioning.
If I can interject too, part of the care team includes recreation and athletics. And we've had several times where we have students who are in a rec sport or a varsity sport, or even just during practice, who end up having a concussion, and that would typically fall underneath a temporary disability. And we work with them on a one-on-one basis to be able to get through that coursework, and then make sure as we monitor. We also have a protocol in place that we worked on to track students who have different types of physical or mental disabilities that are referred through the care team that we can track over time, and concussions is one of those. So hypothetically, if over time we had, let's say, 10 students a year who were referred to us for concussions, we can now isolate those 10 and look and see were there any patterns, what was the nature of the time, so that we can come up with better protocols should we need to.
So as you can see, that this is really a community. The Towson University is really a community. Many of you have been here only for a few months, and so we want to assure you that there's a great deal of collaboration and partnership going on across student affairs to academic affairs and back, and we're just all here to support the students and to support you. Do you have any other questions at this time?
Yes, I have a question. I was wondering if you have any statistics on when are students usually referred to, especially the academic services. I'm not quite sure. I guess I'm trying to figure out whether students are usually caught before like midterms, or like when are you seeing many of your cases? Because I would assume that the earlier that students are referred to you, the better the outcome is going to be. And the reason why I asked the question, I'm a new faculty here, and I just I find myself so busy oftentimes, and I'm not quite and trying to keep up with all the gradings, and everything, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss somebody, and then at that time, it's almost kind of, too late. So what role, do faculty, how are faculty being trained, to catch these red flags within a good amount of time, to really do the students, service, to try and really have them succeed?
Amy, you want to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. So that's a great question, and I really appreciate you wanting to be proactive, because you're absolutely correct. The earlier that we can reach out to students, it equates to more success, because if you catch whatever's going on for them early, then the more resources they have, we can help them navigate things more quickly and get back into their engagement with academics. To answer your question as far as how do you know when, I would say with regard to academic performance, at the beginning of the semester, if you're seeing that this student isn't turning in assignments and you're going into like week 2, week 3, and they're not completing work, I would say don't wait. Definitely refer. Even if you're not sure why they're not participatory, especially if they're not responding to you directly as a professor, and they're sort of, you know, ghosting as far as, you know, to use their term, and they're not reaching back out. Put it in you know, case management so that we can reach out and see if we can assist this student, because oftentimes, especially now with everything that's going on with COVID, with transitioning to an online environment, to just their day in and day out struggles with their family and whatever they're going through, and especially like Susan said, if that is also impacted by a disability, it's all coming together, and we're seeing that actually right now all come together for students in an overwhelming way. And so the first thing that goes is their academic performance, because they're like, I can't do this. And that's the easiest thing for them to slide on. And then oftentimes what happens is they give themselves a pass on 1 or 2 assignments, but then it starts piling up because they have 4 or 5 classes. So I would say the earlier the better. Don't wait. The more proactive we can be. We've seen turnarounds very quickly for students because we can coach them through, as Anthony pointed out, if 5 classes is too much, then maybe they need to let some of that go. And we walk them through different options very carefully. Also, we found that some students are struggling and have a disability that they have not disclosed. They have not registered with ADS. And so we can send them over there. So maybe they would qualify for some reasonable accommodations. So we really help the student walk through every option that is available, to include the fact that there is a medical withdrawal process. Some students who have actually had COVID recently, some students have mental health challenges that have become very, very exacerbated with our current situation and what we're all going through. And sometimes the best option for them, they come to find when we lay it all out for like, here's A, here's B, they are like, maybe it's not a good time for me. Maybe I need to pause, and maybe that's the best choice for me to, you know, work on myself and my life right now, and then re-engage, and reassuring them that even if that's the best option that they choose, that it's not a forever decision, because sometimes they can't forecast, like, you know, is this forever? Like, am I going to be able to come back? That kind of thing. So we really coach them through every option that might be available to them, and have that personal warm touch, in that it's very high touch, and it's very much a process to where, again, it's ongoing. And so we might help them solve one problem, but then 3 weeks later they have another one. And so we're like, come on back, let's figure this out too. So the sooner we can do all those things, the better. And we really appreciate your attention and concern with wanting to do that. So thank you.
I want to jump in. And
I was just going to say, Mollie, could you, especially in an online environment, I think faculty are very worried that they're not going to see the signs. So thank you, Amy, and thank you for jumping in, Mollie.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to just first reiterate what Amy was saying, that in terms of the high touch, high care. I know that we frequently refer students to the care team, or to care, so that Amy can assist them in navigating some of the academic issues, and they are always are the kind of care and compassion that is extended to students in that office is just outstanding. With regard to how you can recognize when students may need to reach out and how you reach out, we actually are delighted to come in and meet with faculty at any of your faculty meetings. If you would like a request for us to come and provide a presentation on that, just what you look for, how you can, what are some of the different ways in which you might approach a student, then if-then chart, which actually I'm going to share with you the if-then chart regarding how you manage risk remotely. I can, maybe I'll send that to you, Patricia, and you can share that with everybody. I'll send that out on Monday because I'm not in the office today, but we are really happy to provide guidance and consultation on that anytime. So please you can reach out to me directly, mherman, M-H-E-R-M-A-N, @towson.edu, and let me know if you would like me to come in and talk with your faculty.
And from a disability perspective, I'd like to add too, I appreciate your wanting to be proactive. It's really hard when towards the end of the semester, after things have really gone awry for a student, that they decide that they should have disclosed earlier that they had a disability and that they just didn't make their way to our office for one reason or another. And at that point, it's so difficult, to try to salvage what's left of the semester. So it's really very helpful from our viewpoint. A student can identify at any time, but the earlier the better. And if you're not sure how to have a conversation about that, I mean, it is a conduit to refer them to student affairs, to Amy, for example, who can then discern, how to get that student best over to our office if they're reluctant to disclose or are just on the fence about it.
I have a quick question. I'm a new faculty, and is there any quick way to look at all your courses? I teach 4 or 5 courses with about 140 students, 140 plus students. Is there any way to quickly go into the courses and see which students really need accommodation? Is there one place where I can go for my students and see which ones? Because oftentimes what happens, I just had a midterm last week, and 2 or 3 students forgot about, mentioning it to me that they need accommodation. And I had to jump hoops to really accommodate them beyond the deadline, and, ran into a little bit of an issue. So on the other hand, if I had a list of students who are in my class, I could have gone and accommodated them without them asking. So.
That's a great point. And at this time, the way our system works is that we leave it to the student to identify themselves to the professor, opposed to providing professors with that information. The reason is that some students don't want to identify in a particular class, and as an adult learner, we respect that. On the other hand, it's completely understandable for faculty to want to be proactive, as we're speaking about, to try to, nudge the student to disclose and to access their accommodations. There are some universities now that are sending out memos as long as the student has given overarching permission for us to do that on behalf of students. And if we upgrade our database system, we may eventually move to that. And there are some good reasons, as long as we have overall permission of the student to go ahead and at the very beginning of class inform professors of any student in their class that's registered with our department. So it's something that we're looking at with a new database system, but unfortunately with the economic climate, I hope we were going to have it by now. I hope we will going forward, but we're seriously looking at that because it does enable, the professor to give the student the help that they may need to go ahead and disclose earlier rather than later.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question if I can. I'm sorry, I can't put my video on. I wasn't getting a good enough connection with the video on, so I apologize. But related to the COVID, for example, I have a student who, as soon as the semester began, came down with COVID. And I guess I really didn't realize I should have been referring her somewhere, but I basically was just giving her extra time, but then she got so far behind, and I'm still working with her to try to help her catch up. But how do you navigate, like, if somebody says they have COVID, what steps should we be taking to support them? I was basically just on my own, just trying to give her more time and encourage her, but maybe I should have gone a more formal route. So maybe you could address that.
Amy, you want to start?
Sure. And that's it's actually addressing something that was kind of in my mind that hadn't come up before. So I appreciate that question. So with regard to student absences, and that would be something that I would think would come up if they had disclosed to you that they had COVID. And with a student who has an absence, well, first of all, if a student, let me back up a little bit. If a student has disclosed to you, hey, I was absent this day, that day, or I missed assignment this time or another because I had COVID, and they disclose that to you, then it's just a good time to say, be empathetic and say, I'm really sorry to hear that. That must have been really hard. You know what? We have some great resources for you. And then you can point them in our direction, or you can say, you know what, may I refer you? And then go ahead and do that. Because likely it's not just an academic situation that the illness has impacted. That said, we have a process for absences with students. And in that way, we help you with that. So if a student has been absent and then they reappear, right? And they're likely going to ask you for makeups and extensions. And first and foremost, it's your discretion, and any flexibility that you can provide is so appreciated. However, if you feel like, this has been a lot, like 3 weeks this student has been out, I don't really know how to approach this. By referring them to our office, what we can do is, first of all, help by meeting with the student, understand the scope. Like when you say you've missed an exam or this many assignments in one class, what's the entire picture? Because likely you have 4 or 5 classes. Sometimes that's recoverable, and you may receive an absence letter from Student Affairs. So come from OVPSA, and it's not something that is a mandate to you to say you must, because you have that academic freedom, but it's certainly encouragement, because what that means is we've met with the student, we've sorted out exactly what the situation is for them, and we've verified it. So that kind of takes away any doubt that you may have that maybe the student is trying to take advantage in some way, which is often the way it can feel. And in accommodating that without, them having a letter from disability services. It's just an illness, an absence. So if you receive such a letter, then that gives you permission to work with the student and give them the flexibility and grace that you feel is reasonable. That said, we do have some students that have illnesses, whether that's COVID or hospitalization or an emergency surgery of some kind, even dental surgery. And the absences related to that are not recoverable. And in that instance, we, again, coach them through what options might be the best for them. There are some students that unfortunately at the end of the semester have an emergency, but they've completed a large portion of work in your courses. There's something called an incomplete, and I'm sure you're aware of what that is. There's some students that might be the best option for them. And in working with the student, if we feel there's an indication just based on what they tell us, we don't always know if that's, we're assuming that they're telling us, hey, I've completed everything, and then I just missed the last 2 weeks of class. In those instances, if it looks like it might be a good option for them, we refer them to you, because we can't make that decision. You have that discretion. And we say, you know what, you need to reach out, communicate with your professors. First and foremost, we always encourage that. And then make your request for the incomplete. And then based on what you believe is the student's academic standing in your class, you may then actually decide this is a good option, and an incomplete can get them through till they get past whatever emergency they had and complete the coursework. But typically that means that they've been a strong student up until that point. So those are kind of the two things that come up with that piece. I hope that answered your question. And if it didn't, please let me clarify further.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you. I do have another question related to I've actually had 3 students that had told me that they, had a death in the family and had to take a trip. How do you go about, it's an awkward thing to say, can you prove that sort of thing, but like, what is the process that's more sensitive than just, I don't know, what process should we take to verify something like that?
Sure. So we do have a formal process, and that's a good thing, but also you're absolutely right. You don't want to jump to that right when someone has said, I had a loss, you know. So first and foremost, I would just, you know, say, this is what I would say. I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry for your loss. How can I help? And then typically they're going to disclose what they need. And that's sort of your segue where to one, you can say, well, first, I would like you to know that the counseling center is available to you to help, you know, you process this. And they also have specific resources surrounded to grief, and Mollie can certainly, you know, elaborate on that. But as far as case management is concerned, we have bereavement letters that we send, and it reflects and mirrors our policy as an institution with regard to bereavement absences. And we help guide them through that process. And often, again, you receive the letter, it will clearly say bereavement. And then we encourage the students to directly work with professors to plan for any missed coursework. And so I would start with those three things. I'm so sorry. You know, did you know this? May I, you know, refer you to someone who can help you with this? And you don't even necessarily have to tell them I need documentation, because that's actually what we ask for. And we have a way of going about that that is very empathetic. And it's not like we come straight out the gate saying, prove it. We have a way of, that's like the last thing, you know, like, oh, by the way, and sometimes it's been hard with COVID. I will say this because depending on the process for someone who has passed and how quickly that happens as far as documentation, we do accept multiple types. It's not always like a death certificate. Most of the time it's an obituary or other things that we can you know, show grace to accept, because it is such a delicate thing to you want to be empathetic, but you also don't want to seem harsh. So that's my suggestion, and then you can pass it over to us so that we can get a formal letter out to support them.
Thank you very much. That's helpful.
And with regard to grief and other topic areas that you may want to let students know, that the Counseling Center has resources specific to lots of different topic areas. If the website that the link that's in the chat, I would encourage everybody to take a look at that so that you're familiar with what's there, and you can actually even just send a direct link to a student that we have. The grief resources are all listed there, just psychoeducation about grief, as well as some online resources, community resources, links to information in the greater community. So, and that's just one example. So I think it's often helpful if you're concerned about a student if you're reaching out by email, to include for them that link. Students can benefit from the resources that the Counseling Center has collected, whether or not they actually want to talk to a counselor. So that's another really important piece of information to pass on. We've made we've really prioritized making sure that we are providing support at all different levels, face-to-face, and as well as people just accessing us remotely and never even talking to a counselor if they're not ready to do that. So, so please note it. Send people our way, even if they really don't want to talk directly to a counselor.